I became a mother at the age of 15 and 16. I didn't have any support around me. I didn't have anywhere to live. My mother was had she was active in her addiction. She had a drug addiction. She had alcohol addiction. Um, and my dad, he made some bad choices in it it landed him in jail. I didn't have that structure. I didn't have anybody to sit me down and say, these are the steps, this is what you need to do, and or talk to me, why are you doing this? I didn't have those conversations. It was just kind of me just being out, going from house to house, living on the couch, making a pallet on the floor. It don't look exactly the way most people think it do. Yes, it exists, but it's not always like that. It's not so in your face all the time. Sometimes it's just subtle. Like, I didn't have answers. I couldn't do nothing. I was helpless at that point. Told me I had to go. She said that me and my daughter, we had to leave. And so that's always been like a part of my mentality, is that I figure it out. We gonna figure it out, and we gonna do it together. And so I moved in, and they gave us a studio apartment, and they had the same like standard type of shelter furniture where it's just, I don't know, just kind of real big and bulky, and it had a table, and it had like the little kitchenette and the bathroom, and I just sat, and I had two bags. At that point, I had two bags of clothes, and I just sat there and I just cried because I'm like this is, I made it here. Like, I'm not in the shelter no more. I have my own place. Even though it wasn't my own place, it was still like it was my own place. I had some privacy. It felt like my own. And I remember my daughter asking me, she was like, "So are we gonna have to move again?" I was like, no, because throughout her whole life, was all we did was just move, just going from place to place. And I was like, no, we don't have to move again. We like this where we gonna live for a little bit. And so she was just happy and just, acting like a kid. And even though we were going through all of that, I still tried to give her that normalcy as best as I can. But kids know more than what we give them credit for, and they pick up on everything. And so she just, bouncing off the furniture, and she was just happy. And I was like, I get to buy food and put it in the refrigerator. All those little things that I wasn't able to do ever. I was able to go buy food and put it in my own refrigerator. I was able to go buy a mop and my own floor. I was able to do all those things. And I was just happy to do it. And during that program, we were able to, that program, it consisted of us living there for 2 years. You had 2 years to get your life together, and then that was it. But I'm like, okay, I can get a lot done in 2 years. I can do it. That's not what happened. My life still, it didn't necessarily spiral out of control, but it was still spiraling. Because not only did I experience homelessness and was still experiencing it, I mean, it wasn't my place. I still had all this anger. I still had a lot of confusion. I still had a lot of sadness, disappointment. I was angry. I was so angry. I shut down emotionally. I couldn't. I made friends, but I really couldn't get too emotionally attached to nobody. I think I just had to protect myself. And the staff there, they were nice, and they tried so hard. They, I know I gave them a run for their money. I was like, nah. Eventually, they gave up, but but they tried really hard to help me. And but I couldn't let nobody in. And I mean, things still happened while I was there, but an example of all that anger I had, the building that the program was in, the owner didn't want to renew the lease, so we had to move. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, so what does that mean for me? What does this look like? And you know, I'm talking to the staff, and they like, well, you haven't been talking to us. You will be all right. You gonna be okay. I'm like, no, I need to know what's gonna happen. Tell me what's gonna happen. And so they they told me that they got another building. We were gonna move into a bigger building. We're gonna have larger apartments, and everything was gonna be okay. But I was just still like, okay, I don't believe it. No, I'm not. I got to figure this thing out. So I'm calling people like, well, we got to move. Do you think we can stay with you? And I just kept getting like, no, it's not a good time. I'm sorry. Maybe you can go to another shelter. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. And we had to pack up. This was probably 7 months into me living there. And I'm finding myself back in that same familiar emotional place that I was in just before, just 9 months before. And this one day, one of the girls in the building who I never really talked to, we never really got along, but we didn't really talk. And like kids, I would get my son on the weekends, and I remember I had just bought my kids some shoes, whatever characters. I think it was like Barney and Power Rangers or something. And they really wanted those shoes, so I bought them. And this one girl, she made a comment about my kids' shoes. And, just keep in mind that I had all this anger. I was confused about what was going on and, where we were going to go and what would happen if things didn't follow through with this new building. Like, where are we going to go? So I had all these emotions already building up inside of me. And this girl said something about my kids' shoes, and it took 4 people to hold me back from getting to her because I was that angry. And nobody knew because for the most part I was just really quiet, just stayed to myself, laid back. But she said the one comment about my kids' shoes, and that was it. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I was going to take all my frustrations out on her, but it took 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, to hold me back from her. And I don't know what I would have did if they didn't. And they and my kids were out there. It was just not a good look. And I thought they were gonna put me out, but they didn't. And because fighting wasn't allowed, so I thought they were gonna put me out. But I hadn't put my hands on. They stopped it. So one of the staff people, they pulled me to the side and was just asking me, what happened right there, what was going on, and just really trying to get in. And I'm like, just leave me alone. Don't worry about it. Just tell her don't ever say nothing to me and don't ever say nothing about my kids. Like, I was just livid. I was pissed. Like, you don't talk about my kids. You don't say nothing to my kids without my permission. Just go on about your way. And so, the staff, they knew to leave me alone, and they just left me alone. I finished packing. And nobody in the building said a word to me for weeks. Nobody said, the staff, nobody. I did my chores. I signed in, signed out. Nobody said hi. Nobody said good morning. And I didn't care. I was like, well, that's fine. And we moved into the new building within that week. And maybe a couple of weeks after we moved in, the same girl, she ended up in the same room for whatever reason. I think we had a meeting to do or something. And she apologized to me. And I was still like, so? Like, you still don't, you lucky. But she apologized to me. And maybe a week or two, I started saying hi to her. But, I mean, that was just an example of how much anger I had in me. And it only took a little bit to set me off. Well, that was like the last straw. You know, I was just a ball of emotions, and it just exploded. And we stayed in this building until I was able to, until I graduated out of the program and I completed it. But it was like I didn't accomplish nothing because I didn't let anybody help me. I didn't let the staff help me. Even though I didn't have the support from my family, I had a staff full of people who was there trying to help me, and I was like, leave me alone. I will figure this out. I still didn't figure nothing out. I was still like, here it is, 6 months, and I got to get ready to move again. What am I finna do? What am I going to do? And they kept asking me, what you gonna do? You've been in school, but what's next? What you gonna do? You ain't got no money saved up. And I'm like, I don't. I let 2 years go by that fast, and I didn't really accomplish none of the goals that we set when I started the program. And here's all my emotions again. Here's one thing. Somebody said something to me again, and there it was. But by that time, I was moving out, and at that time, I kind of snapped on the staff person, and they were probably like, "Yeah, it's time for her to go." So, uh, and so while I was moving, I was actually pregnant again. I was pregnant with my third child, and I was in a relationship with her dad, and he wanted me to move in with him, but I was scared. I was reluctant. I didn't want to because I was scared that he would put us out. And so I was moving out, but I was moving with him because I had nowhere else to go because I didn't follow through with the goals um, that we had set. And so I moved in with him in his place. And it didn't feel the same like it did when I moved in the program when we had the first building. It didn't feel the same because I still felt homeless because I was moving in with him. And it was his place. It wasn't my place. And it wasn't, but he made it as comfortable as he could. But our relationship wasn't good. There was a lot of abuse, a lot of emotional and physical abuse. And I just got tired of it. And I remember telling my cousin who lived in Indiana, and she couldn't believe that I was going through that because nobody could ever imagine me going through any type of domestic violence, any type of abuse, because I was always a fighter. I was always like protecting other people, but here it is, I'm in this situation. And so I got tired of it, and at this time I had a car, and that was probably the only thing that I did accomplish living at the facility is I bought a car. And I got tired of the abuse, and I packed up my kids, all three of my kids, and while he was gone, I put all of our stuff in my trunk again, and I left. And I moved with my cousin here to Indiana, and I stayed with her for about a month. I was working part-time as a homemaker for this elderly woman. So I had money coming in. I was still getting public assistance, so I had some means of income. By this time, I was about 21 or 22. I can't really be sure. And I couldn't stay in her apartment anymore. It was me. It was us four plus her boyfriend, and her two kids, and it was just crowded. And so I just found an apartment in Indiana, and I never left. But when I moved in, that's when I knew I made it out of homelessness at that moment, because I knew I was responsible for paying the rent. I was responsible for furnishing it. This was mine. It was my name on the lease. So I am totally responsible for everything that's going on in this house. And it felt really good. It was empty, and all we had was the car and the clothes in the trunk, but we made do, and we ended up getting furniture and beds and everything else. Everything just came together, but I was still in school. Story of my life. And but I made it out. It was a long, hard, emotional or emotionless 7 to 8 years. It was hard. The hardest time in my life. But I knew that that wasn't the end of my story. I knew that I was going to be successful. My goal was to get an associate's degree and get a bachelor's degree and get a master's and get my PhD. That was my goal, because I knew I was going to get out of this situation through my education. I knew that. But that's what my goal was for me, and that's how I knew I was going to get out of it. So I hadn't completed that goal, but I was still on the track. So I knew I didn't give up yet. I wasn't ready to give up. I was never going to give up. And my life started calming down. Um, so I was able to get my GED. I went back to school. I became a CNA. I worked as a CNA for some years. Decided, you know what? I can do more. I can do a lot more. And so I just kept going. And I got my bachelor's degree. I got my bachelor's degree in social work. And that was like the happiest moment of my life, because it made me think about everything that I went through to get to that point. I mean, I struggled. I sacrificed. It was hard. It was hard. I went on to get my master's degree. And so now I can sit here and say that I made it out. Like, I'm not homeless no more. I'm not struggling like I was no more. I'm not struggling. I don't have to ask nobody for anything. I don't have to wonder where our meals were going to come from. I don't have to worry about strangers. I made it out, but it was because of my desires. It was because of what I wanted for my life, and I held on to that so tight. I held on to that so tight. That's all I thought about every single day was, I got to get out of this. I got to go to school. I don't care what happened in my life. I went to school. From school to school, I just went. That was my escape. That was my way out, and that's what happened. I was able to accomplish my dream. I was walked across the stage with a bachelor's degree, coming from being a teenage mother, a homeless teenage mother with a drug addicted mother, a father that was in jail, people always putting you down, people always telling me I wasn't gonna be nothing, I was gonna end up like my mother, and just, but I made it out of all of that with nobody. I did it. And I'm not saying it was easy, because it definitely wasn't easy. It was not a walk in the park. But I made it out. But that's because I persevered through it all. And what I would say to somebody, another young woman that's in my situation, or even a young man who have, custody of his kids or raising his kids alone, is that even though that you're going through that situation, that's not the end of it. It's not. You have to hold on to your dreams. You have to find something to hold on to so that you can make it out. Going through these situations, it just seemed like the end of it. It seemed like this is it. I'm gonna just leave. I'm gonna just give up right here. But you can't. You can't give up, because you weren't meant to give up right now. You weren't put here on earth. You wasn't given life to just go through these different things and go through these different situations and then just give up. You weren't. It's so much out here. You can do anything that you want to do, and life's still gonna happen. But it's how you react to it. It's what you put in it. It's what you get out of it. It's how you move through it, and that's what you got to do. You have to be able to move through these situations. You cannot sit still, or you will get stuck. That wasn't acceptable for me. I refused to stay stuck. Even though it felt like it, I couldn't see past the situation. Sometimes I couldn't see past the situation, but I had to keep looking past it, because I knew deep down inside that that is not where I was going to end up. That was not the end of my story. I knew for a fact that it wasn't. And as long as you know that this is not the end of your story, you got to keep going through it. You got to keep pushing through it. But it's not the end of it. You're the author of your own story. Just because this is where you are right now, don't mean that this is where you're going to end up. Who would have thought that I would have been sitting here with a master's degree? Who would have? And I still look at my degrees and I'm like, I actually have 2 degrees. Not 1, but 2. Coming from being a dropout, coming from being a teenage mother, being homeless. I mean, I rose above the statistics, and I really didn't even realize that that's what I did. And it wasn't until I actually got my master's degree that I realized that, I actually overcame everything. And it's the best feeling in the world. It's the best feeling in the world, because, like, I'm unstoppable now. Like, I could do whatever I want to do. I literally can do whatever I want to do. Again, my name is Kenesha, and thank you for watching my story of finding me.